The funniest thing about bullies is how they walk around like the world owes them respect, right up until the world hands them the invoice. One minute they're smirking, pointing fingers, making rules for everybody else, and the next they're standing in their own ruined kingdom, realizing the bill has their name on it. I know that because I stood in the middle of Patricia Milton's dream kitchen with a court order in my hand, Italian marble under my boots, one of those fancy built-in fridges still humming behind me, and everything else dead quiet. 3 hours earlier, this was the room where she planned how to bury me. Now, the paper in my hand said half of what I was looking at legally belonged to me. And yeah, I know how crazy that sounds. A retired Army E8 with an inheritance that wouldn't even buy a nice SUV is not supposed to end up owning part of a woman's $750,000 house. But Patricia had the same weakness most bullies have. She believed rules were something she used on other people, never something that could turn around and break her teeth. She demanded a professional land survey to punish me over an old mailbox. The survey came back with the kind of punchline that makes you laugh first and then sit down hard. Her house was built 18 feet onto my land. 18 feet. That was enough to swallow her kitchen, part of her master suite, and the garage where she parked the BMW she liked to step out of before coming down my porch to talk to me like I was gum on her heel. The woman who called me neighborhood trash had, by her own greed and her own paperwork, turned herself into my trespassing neighbor. This whole war started 3 months earlier, when I buried my Uncle Joe and inherited his house on Maple Street. Uncle Joe was Army Corps of Engineers, 32 years, Bronze Star, one of those men who didn't need to raise his voice because competence did the talking for him. His place was a 1952 ranch, nothing fancy. Old cedar siding, worn porch, strong bones, every repair done right even if it wasn't pretty. It sat there like a stubborn middle finger in a neighborhood that used to belong to working people. Teachers, cops, mechanics, electricians, folks who fixed their own fences and mowed their own yards. Then the money came. First, a few fixer-uppers sold to lawyers and agents. Then whole blocks got flipped into fake mansions with columns that held up nothing but ego. Property taxes climbed. HOA fees tripled. And the people who built that neighborhood got slowly priced out by people who called themselves stewards while acting like conquerors. Patricia Milton was queen of that new order. 3 days after the funeral, I was still hauling boxes when she rang the bell. She stood there in a pressed blazer and salon-perfect hair, holding a leather portfolio like she was carrying nuclear launch codes. She introduced herself as HOA president and prestige real estate professional, which told me everything I needed to know. Then she handed me a violation notice. The problem, according to Patricia, was Uncle Joe's mailbox, a plain black metal post that had been standing there since long before she moved in. Apparently, it no longer matched updated neighborhood standards. The community now preferred earth tones, upscale materials, enhanced visual harmony, all that polished nonsense that really means poor-looking things offend rich people. She gave me 30 days to replace it and informed me that daily fines would start after that. I asked what would happen if I didn't. She smiled like a shark smelling blood and said they took property value protection very seriously. Then she left, heels clicking down the walk like a countdown. Now, 12 years in the Army teaches you a few useful habits. One of them is this. When somebody comes at you hard over something small, it usually means they think you won't look around. So I went into Uncle Joe's basement office that same night and started digging through his files. The man kept records like he expected the dead to come back asking questions. Deeds, permits, tax maps, survey copies, handwritten notes, everything labeled, organized, cross-referenced. Behind the water heater, I found a manila folder marked Property Lines. Important. Check if trouble starts. That got my attention. Inside was the original subdivision plat, later surveys, setback notes, and several pages Uncle Joe had marked in yellow and red. The next morning I grabbed a tape measure and started checking what I could. Frontage looked right. Side yard looked right. Fence looked right, too. But when I measured from my back fence toward Patricia's foundation, the number stopped me cold. County setback required 22 feet. Actual distance? 19 feet, 8 inches. I measured again. Same number. Then I found a note clipped inside the folder in Uncle Joe's careful block handwriting. 2019 construction questionable. Check setbacks if they push you around. Love, Joe. I stood there staring at that note with the tape still in my hand. And for the first time, I understood this wasn't just some HOA snob harassing the new guy. Uncle Joe had seen something. Maybe not enough to start a fight while he was alive. Maybe he just didn't want to hassle. But he'd left me the map if I ever needed it. 2 weeks later, Patricia escalated. At the monthly HOA meeting, she put my property on the agenda like I was an infestation problem. She clicked through slides showing my mailbox, then, greedy now, added my fence, claimed it might violate setback requirements, and said I needed to pay for a licensed professional survey to prove compliance. The board voted for it in under a minute. 7 hands up, fast and obedient, like trained seals. That was the moment she lost the war. Because what Patricia thought was, I'm going to bury this guy in cost and paperwork. What she didn't know was Uncle Joe had left me one more surprise. Tucked behind the old plats was a certificate account statement and a note. Emergency Survey Fund. Use only if they push too hard. Make them regret it. There was a little over $22,000 in that account. I hired the exact survey company Patricia recommended, because irony is sweeter when it's documented. But I didn't ask them to survey just my lot. I ordered a comprehensive adjacent property boundary analysis, both lots, every line, every setback, every inch that mattered. It cost me more than $3,000. Hurt a little too. But some money buys peace, and some money buys the truth. They came out on a Tuesday morning. By noon, the lead surveyor had that look on his face men get when numbers stop being boring and start becoming explosive. He told me my fence was exactly where it was supposed to be. Then he looked at Patricia's house and said, that house is a problem. Not maybe. Not close. A problem. Turns out Uncle Joe's fence wasn't even on the property line. It sat 3 feet inside his property, which meant that Tricia's foundation wasn't just too close. It crossed over hard. 18 feet of structure sat on my land. Kitchen, master bedroom, attached garage, almost 40% of the footprint. I remember staring at her house like I'd never seen it before. That oversized kitchen island? Mine. That luxury closet? Mine. That triple garage where she parked while planning my funeral? Mine too. I asked the surveyor how solid the numbers were. He said within 2 inches, survey grade accurate, legally defensible anywhere. Then I asked what happened when somebody built across a property line. He gave me the short version. Buyout, boundary adjustment, or partition. And partition meant the court could force sale of the whole property if the encroachment couldn't be resolved. I nearly laughed in the yard. Patricia had demanded a survey to destroy me. Instead, she bought herself a legal nightmare with a tape measure attached. I hired Rebecca Arden, a property attorney and former Air Force JAG, with a voice so calm it made bad news sound official. She reviewed the survey, the notices, the HOA minutes, all of it, and said this wasn't some petty dispute. It was serious encroachment with real leverage. Then she dug deeper into Patricia's permit records and found a twist that changed everything. The approved 2019 plan showed the correct legal setback, meaning the house didn't drift onto my land by accident. Somebody moved that foundation during construction and never filed amended plans. Later, we learned the construction supervisor was Patricia's brother-in-law. So now this wasn't just careless. It looked deliberate. I hand-delivered the certified survey to Patricia's front door. Her lawyer called within hours, talking about harassment, intimidation, bad faith tactics. I let him talk. Then I asked him one simple question. What exactly did his client intend to do about the 18 feet of her house sitting on my land? Silence. After that, Patricia went full scorched earth. She held emergency HOA sessions, posted online warnings about me, filed complaint after complaint with city departments, tried to turn inspectors into her personal attack dogs. One morning, I caught 3 guys in my backyard cutting my fence because she'd sent them with fake authority papers claiming it violated emergency standards. I recorded the whole thing, called the police, and watched the crew pack up real fast when the officer explained felony property destruction in terms they could understand. That was when I realized we were past neighborhood drama. This had moved into the kind of desperation that leaves fingerprints everywhere. Still, the biggest turn came from somebody I never expected. A local reporter named Sarah Williams called and said she'd been hearing about HOA abuse, especially against veterans and older homeowners who couldn't afford legal fights. I showed her everything: the mailbox notice, the HOA vote, the survey, the permit records, the police report, the complaint trail. She fact-checked every piece of it, then published a story. That article hit like a grenade. Neighbors who'd stayed quiet started ordering their own surveys. City workers stopped treating Patricia's complaints like gospel. County offices got interested in her tax filings, too, because if your lot usage doesn't match what you've been reporting, the government suddenly develops a very personal interest in your math. Patricia had spent years using isolation and pressure to keep people scared. The second sunlight hit her methods, all that control started falling apart. Rebecca filed quiet title and petition action. The court hearing came fast. Patricia walked in with her attorney, and the kind of face people wear when they haven't been sleeping. Our side had survey maps, permit records, independent verification, construction notes, and text messages about maximizing buildable space. Her side had excuses. The judge listened, reviewed the evidence, and cut right through performance. Patricia had demanded the survey. The survey was valid. Independent review confirmed it. Her house crossed onto my land. The permit deviations were real. And because the encroachment looked intentional, the court was not in a forgiving mood. Then came the choice. Either Patricia bought the encroached portion at fair market value, plus attorney fees and statutory penalties, or the property could face petition by sale. In plain English, pay me for the land under your house or risk losing the whole thing. When the appraisal came back, the number was brutal: $312,000 for the affected portion. Add fees, penalties, filing costs, all the legal blood in the water, and Patricia owed me $357,000. She paid it. Second mortgage, new debt, years of consequences. And I'll be honest with you, sitting in Rebecca's office with that certified bank draft on the table in front of me felt strange. Satisfying, yes, but strange too, because this whole thing had started with Patricia trying to erase people like my uncle from a neighborhood they helped build. Taking her money mattered. It was justice. But it didn't fix the system that let somebody like her weaponize power in the first place. So before I signed the final settlement, I added one more condition. Patricia had to resign from the HOA board, and she had to publicly support Frank Morrison as her replacement. Frank was a Vietnam veteran, retired contractor, straight-spined, no patience for polished tyranny. Exactly the kind of man Patricia would never have chosen unless the law had her by the throat. Her lawyers hated it. She looked like she'd swallow glass. But the other option was rolling back toward petition, and by then she knew better. So she agreed. Frank won by a landslide. Turns out most people in Willowbrook were sick of Patricia. They were just too scared to stand up alone. Once she lost, the whole spell broke. Using part of the settlement money, Frank and I helped create a fund for veterans and working families dealing with HOA abuse, boundary fights, and bureaucratic intimidation. Legal consultations, survey help, emergency support, practical tools for people who didn't have the money or stomach to fight dirty all by themselves. The thing grew faster than either of us expected. And Patricia? She kept the house, technically, but she lost the part that mattered most to her. Status, control, influence. People stopped fearing her. Neighbors stopped bowing. Her real estate reputation took a hit. Eventually, she sold and moved away. Uncle Joe's mailbox is still standing right where he left it. Same plain black metal post. Same quiet little reminder that some people mistake simple things for weakness. Every time I walk past it, I think about what all this taught me. Not some big, noble speech. Just one hard truth. Bullies love systems they think only work one way. Rules find committees, notices, forms. They adore all of it when it keeps other people small. But the second those same rules turn around and pin them to the wall, suddenly they want grace. They want understanding. They want exceptions. Funny how fast that happens. A year later, I stood in my backyard grilling burgers for veterans, neighbors, kids running to the grass, people laughing where tension used to live. Frank was arguing about charcoal like it was a military doctrine issue. Somebody's dog stole a bun. The evening felt loose and human and honest, the kind of neighborhood Uncle Joe believed in. I looked down toward the curb of that mailbox, then over at the stretch of street Patricia used to dominate, and I felt something better than revenge, relief, because the sweetest part wasn't the money, though I won't pretend that check didn't feel good. It was knowing she had to sign it, resign, and watch the people she looked down on rebuild that neighborhood without her. Clean consequence. No screaming, no drama, just a court order, a survey stake, and karma with a measuring tape. So let me ask you this. When somebody uses rules to bully people for years, and those same rules come back and wreck their life, is that justice or just revenge done smarter? And have you ever had your own Patricia, somebody so sure they held all the power, right up until the day the bill landed in their lap? Tell me where you stand, who you think was right, who was wrong, and how far is too far when you finally decide you're done being pushed around.